I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
Once again, we are stressing that this episode is being recorded before the release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, even though it will be released after. We are hedging our bets here. We are not sure, but we're going to go with it anyway, of whether or not the What If series connects into Multiverse of Madness. We're just taking an educated guess and going in because, hey, everyone thought that other Doctor Strange in the movie had a very, very striking resemblance to the Strange Supreme from the What If series.
Yeah, it does seem like that's what it's gonna be. That is immediately what everybody started calling it. The way that they had the makeup done and everything looked a lot like what they had done for this episode.
Yeah, so it's a bit different than what we usually do. Usually when we do TV shows, we do multiple episodes, but we're just concentrating on the one episode this time.
Yeah, this is the first time we've talked about the What If series. So let's just really quickly give a little bit of rundown. These are alternate universe stories about MCU characters we are already familiar with. What if the stories that we are already familiar with happened in a slightly different way?
Yeah, what if it was Peggy Carter who became the super soldier? What if Odin didn't adopt Loki? And stuff like that.
Yeah. This one is, what if the car crash that had destroyed Doctor Strange's hands instead left him completely intact but killed Christine Palmer instead?
And
so,
I gotta give credit to Marvel because they pulled heaven and earth here to get as many of the original actors from the film to reprise their roles for this entire series.
Yeah, this series has most of the actors back. So really in this episode, the only new actor we have to talk about is the addition of the Watcher, which is in every episode and is a new character for this series. We do see the Watchers at one point in the MCU proper, in the live action.
Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy during a Stan Lee cameo. But this is the first time we really have a Watcher as a character. And the entire series is narrated from the perspective of that Watcher, showing us these various universes. And it is portrayed by Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright is an absolute stone cold legend. I adore him. You might know him from the Bond films, because he's Felix Leiter in the Daniel Craig films. He's in The Hunger Games. He's in Westworld. And he is the most recent Commissioner Gordon in the newest Batman, opposite Robert Pattinson.
Man, working both Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
Most of the cast, again, we are getting our returning cast members. Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange. Rachel McAdams as Christine Palmer. Benedict Wong as Wong. And Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. I mean, this is not the first time a lot of these actors have done animation. I mean, we kind of mentioned it in the last episode how Tilda Swinton is doing the upcoming Del Toro CGI Pinocchio movie.
It's kind of interesting because you would think that, like, well, okay, these are people who do not really do voice acting and all that kind of stuff, but
there are some of these episodes where it's clear that yes, they got the original actors back, but they're not very good at voice acting.
And some of the actors were absolutely born for voice acting.
Hemsworth, amazing in doing voice acting.
Yeah, Hemsworth absolutely kills it. Clark Gregg kills it. Hiddleston and Cumberbatch both kill it. I mean, some of these people are just like, yes, please, and some of them you're like, okay, that was a paycheck for you.
Yeah, but it was at least it was appreciated that they went as far as they did to bring back as many actors as they could. And we also, we haven't gotten to that episode yet, but it was
Chadwick Boseman's final portrayal of T'Challa. Yeah. But this by far was not Cumberbatch's first time doing voice acting. I mean, he had already done some stuff for DreamWorks. He had already done that Grinch film.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that Tilda came back for this.
Me too.
That was the one I didn't expect. Like, I was kind of expecting both Benedicts to be down for this because they're both awesome for that. But Rachel McAdams, I kind of expected to sort of not be as cool about it. Just because Christine doesn't get to do a lot in this.
Yeah.
Like, just by default. I mean, it's like she has a couple of lines because most of the story is about her being dead, Yeah. But Tilda coming back for this really shocked me. Let's talk about the story, because this was of all of the episodes of What If, this was the story that really got to me most.
Yeah, there's a lot. The setup for this episode is a bit different because we talked about, when we talked about Doctor Strange, how by the time the movie starts, Stephen and Christine have already broken up. In this story, they're still together.
Yeah, and that is his girlfriend, and they are going to the celebration together.
As we talked about in the movie, he's getting an award for the technique that they together created.
Although in this version, it seems like it's more him, because she is there being very supportive. She's telling him kind of, she's joking about how he should give his speech. She wants him to run up there like a contestant on Price is Right. Like, yeah, woo, I won. It's very flirty. It's very, they have a good relationship. He seems less like a douchebag. It's a very different Stephen Strange than we are used to in the sacred timeline.
He's happy here. He has everything that he could want. He's got the award. He's still the great neurosurgeon, and he has the love of his life, Christine, by his side.
And he's still got that ostentatious Lamborghini, and the Armani tux, and the
watch,
and the watch. They're probably still in that spinny case I want to destroy.
So, yeah, this one plays out very similar to how it did in the Doctor Strange film. The only difference is that Christine is in the car. He's still as much as a reckless driver. He's not texting and driving like in the film, but he is distracted because he's talking to Christine.
He tries to go around a slow-moving semi-truck and he pulls into the other lane without really checking, and they get
Yeah.
they get
They get rear-ended.
well, no, the initial crash is he pulls into the other lane, and there's a car coming because he's looking at her and he doesn't check when he pulls into the other lane, and he has to swerve to miss the car, which sends them into a light pole, which spins the car and then off the cliff, and then it's a recreation of the original crash.
It feels like they took the film and just animated on top of it. It is a perfect recreation of the car crash from Doctor Strange.
I want to talk about the animation just for a second, because this entire series, some of the animation is brilliant and some of the animation is questionable, and it is so bizarre.
It's cel-shaded 3D animation, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
And this is an episode where it both works and doesn't, because every background, every object, and most of the characters are gorgeous. And it's like this in most of the series, because some of it's almost like they took the actors and rotoscoped over them. It is an almost perfect recreation of some of the actors. Some of it's like, wow, they took these faces and they put it in there. Like T'Challa is wonderful. Their Nick Fury and their Coulson, so good. Some of them, I'm like, who were you looking at when you drew this character model? And unfortunately, one of them is Strange. It looks absolutely nothing like Benedict Cumberbatch, and I don't know who they were looking at when they drew this character model.
I think a lot of it comes down to likeness rights. They might not. I know they
they have. I guarantee you, all of these people have signed their image rights over to.
I have the action figure. I can tell you that. Yes, they do, but maybe not for television animation. Because a lot of and also could be for whatever actors they could get. Like, they didn't get Robert Downey Jr. or Scarlett Johansson or Chris Evans to voice their counterparts in the animated series. So maybe they had to change the facial features around to make it not look like those actors.
I would bet very large sums of money that is not it.
I don't know.
But it's almost like the character model for Strange in this was drawn by somebody that had Benedict Cumberbatch's face described to them by somebody who had seen it, and was like, it's like a weird police sketch almost. And then it's animated beautifully, but it's not. And then some of the other times you look at it and you're like, wow, that is exactly who they were drawing. I know exactly that. And then sometimes it's just not. And I do not know what was going on with Strange. But some of the other ones, like when Ancient One comes on, you're like, okay, yeah, no, I feel that. I know what that's doing, but yeah, no, I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, but everything else is beautiful. Like the backgrounds, especially. You're like, I want some of that as artwork in my house. It's just so gorgeous. So I'm not like completely saying that this is like a poorly animated show or anything. It's just sometimes for very specific characters, you're like, who exactly were you trying to draw here? I don't know.
Anyway. We go through the events very quickly of the first Doctor Strange movie. Grief-stricken after Christine's death, he went to all over the world to find answers. That's all we're given, and that leads us into very, very good recreations of events of the first Doctor Strange movie. The meeting of the Ancient One, the gaining of the Eye of Agamotto, the Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Which is interesting because that is him recording it again. They do not pull that from the film, which I find interesting.
Then we go after the events of the first Doctor Strange movie. We're not exactly sure when this happens. We just know it happens after the event. It happens 2 years after the death of Christine Palmer.
Yeah, 2 years to the night. We have our Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme sitting in the Sanctum Sanctorum drinking. And Wong wakes up and he's like, what are you doing up? And Strange is like, yeah, it's the 2-year anniversary of my girlfriend's death that started all this. I'm a weirdo in a costume with magic. And I'm getting drunk on the cheap stuff, according to Wong. And Wong's like, yeah, you should maybe go to bed. And he's like, yeah, maybe. But instead, I'm going to take the time stone and go back in time and save my girlfriend.
Yeah, this starts the chain of obsession. He now has the ability to travel through time. He's already gone through the lesson of you don't change the natural order. You don't use time magic recklessly. But it's the anniversary of his girlfriend's death. He's still grief-stricken. He's not over that night. He blames himself. So he travels back in time to that night in an attempt to change reality, to change history.
This is where we get the most brutal series of events I think they've ever committed to the MCU. And it's in the freaking cartoon.
No matter what Strange does, he tries to say, we're going to go a different route. We're going to have a different, we're going to skip the ceremony. Why don't we
you drive this time.
We're going to just we're just going to go out for pizza. We're not going to even go to the ceremony. We'll stay in tonight. I'm not even going to pick you up at all. You're not coming. And each and every time, no matter how Strange tries to change it, Christine still dies.
And it is the most bizarre series of events of how Christine dies each and every time. He doesn't pass the truck. They get rear-ended by a different car. He has her drive, and she ends up crashing the car instead. He goes a different route. They get T-boned by a different truck. They go to get pizza instead of going to the ceremony, and a man with a gun walks in and robs the place, and she gets shot to death.
They decide to go dancing instead, and she has a heart attack on the dance floor.
Yeah. He leaves her at home and skips the ceremony to go drinking in a bar, and there is a gas line explosion at her house which kills her. This universe has decided F that chick in particular.
If you're a Doctor Who fan, this is what they call a fixed point in time.
And if you're a Doctor Who fan, they specifically reference that later when as he is lying there next to the wreckage of his Lambo, the Ancient One pops out of a portal and says, "Hi, Steven, are you a Doctor Who fan? Because this is what's called a fixed point in the universe." She calls it an absolute point in this. But I actually started laughing at this point. I was crying, and then the Ancient One pops out of a portal, and she's like, "Hey, Steven, this is an absolute point in the universe." And I was like, excuse me? Did we just bring Doctor Who logic into the MCU? Because I am down for that.
Doctor Who comics were published by Marvel.
Yeah, no, I'm fully aware of that. Says the girl with the Seal of Rassilon tattoo who is recording this underneath a 12-foot scarf. But I actually started laughing and had to pause the episode when I first watched it because I was crying because it's a brutally emotional episode. And the Ancient One just sort of shows up and was like, "Can I offer you some Doctor Who logic?" And I was like, "Oh, we're doing this, are we? Okay."
So the Ancient One says, Christine has to die in this reality because she's the reason you set out to study the mystic arts in the first place. If she doesn't die, you never set out on your journey to become the Sorcerer Supreme, Paradox, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, if she doesn't die, you don't become a sorcerer, you don't get the Eye of Agamotto, you don't get the Time Stone, you can't go back in time and save her. Strange looks at her and he's like, "So my choice is to let her go." And she's like, "Yeah, not even the greatest sorcerers ever figured that out." And he's like, "Really? No, not buying that. There's got to be knowledge out there somewhere."
And we talked about this when we talked about the first film. This is partially his ego, but partially you've given him a challenge. And when we've seen in the first movie, you give Stephen Strange a challenge, he's going to go for it.
Yeah, so he decides to find the lost library of Cagliostro. We heard that name in the original film. We didn't particularly talk about it, but if you've seen the first film, that's the books he keeps reading about. And it was also the guy who originally had the Eye of Agamotto and the Time Stone and passed it on to the other sorcerers. So he uses his sling ring to get away from the Ancient One, who is now attacking him.
Yeah.
And he ends up in the jungle next to the Lost Library. That was easy. But we're short on time, so we gotta get through this.
This is only a half an hour episode.
Yeah. And he ends up meeting this librarian called Obeng, who apparently is the guy who just hangs out at the Lost Library. I don't know how you get a job guarding the Lost Library, but there he is. We start our montage, because you gotta have a montage. Again, it's Strange using magic to be a giant nerd. Respect.
So he goes through these forbidden books and he sees that it is possible to counteract an absolute point, a fixed point in time. You just need the right amount of power. And to get the kind of power, he needs to absorb it from other magical beings. And the magical beings aren't very willing to give up their abilities to this braggadocious human.
I like that he starts with opening a portal and tentacles come out and he's like, "Hey, can I borrow one of your tentacles?" Tentacles are like, "No."
I've seen this movie. Doesn't end well for the schoolgirl.
Yeah. I don't think you should immediately start with tentacle hentai. Maybe start with something a little more your speed, dude. But
he does though. He says, let's try something small, and you get a freaking garden gnome.
Yeah, I don't really know why garden gnome is where we start here. And then he's like, "All right, garden gnome, fine. I shall absorb the powers of the great and mighty garden gnome." So, after he absorbs the power of Sherlock gnomes, he moves on to the weird little cockroach thing.
Just takes the cape, says, I draw the line of bugs.
I don't know why garden gnomes are okay, but cockroaches... I'm not... Roaches are where I draw the line as well, so okay, fine.
One by one, he keeps on absorbing the powers of bigger and bigger magical beings.
I do like at one point he actually does become Smaug, so I like that. I like that.
Nice reference there.
That reference.
This is also, as we see it later in the series, the first time anyone acknowledges that the Watcher is there, because the Watcher says he's on the wrong path. And that whole sequence, he's on the wrong path. I can warn him, but he won't listen to me. That line for like 4 months became like a meme on everywhere I went, like TikTok and YouTube. People making their own videos of their own past mistakes with themselves, their present selves as the Watcher. I could stop my past self, but he wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah. But yeah, Strange does kind of hear that. Like, who said that? What? Where are you?
Well, that shows you how powerful he's getting. He's starting to transcend reality, which this also sets the tone for the big finale of What If later on.
Yeah.
We'll get to that eventually.
Yeah. I would like to talk about the entire series at some point, because it is very interesting. But he, does absorb all of these creatures one by one, and he gets his own version of the Cloak of Levitation, although in a kind of purpley color, which I dig. He works his way back up to whatever that tentacle thing was that we saw part of earlier, and finally he opens the portal back up, and he just takes a bunch of the tentacles and absorbs them into himself, and he's like, all right, I have worked my way back up to tentacle hentai. It no longer squeaks me out anymore. We can do the thing now. And he goes back to Obeng, and Obeng's like, yeah, dude, you've been in there for hundreds of years. I am super dying now.
He essentially has done what the Ancient One had done. Artificially extended their life using dark magic.
Yeah, although it's suggested that he was doing it via the time stone rather than the dark dimension in this one.
Yeah.
Obeng is like, yeah, no, please do not save me, because immediately Strange is like, no, I can fix this. I can reverse time. You can be a young man again. He's like, no, I want to die. Death is fine. Death is supposed to be the natural order of things. By the way, you're only half a man. There is another Skywalker. You have fun dealing with that. Peace out. Goodbye.
So yeah, we flash back to earlier in the episode where we see Strange once again sulking at the 2-year anniversary of Christine's death. But in this reality, he says no. He's going to put the time stone away. Stop
living in the past.
Stop living in the past, at least for tonight, he says. He puts the time stone away. He's not going to go back in time to save Christine. He's accepted Christine's loss. When he's confronted by the Ancient One, and the entire world is melting, and he's wondered what was in the whiskey.
Yeah.
We're
what is in that honey?
A lot more than honey.
I still think it's the honey.
He sees the Ancient One, who has told him that, hey, turns out you, in another timeline, is going back in time to try to save Christine. So in order to do that, I had to split him into 2 people. So you're the part of his mind that didn't want to do it, and you got to stop him, because the only person who can stop Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange.
So now we've got vanilla flavored Doctor Strange and Strange Supreme, which I'm guessing is just Doctor Strange with some sour cream, tomatoes, and lettuce. But, he's like, well, how am I supposed to find myself and beat myself? And then Strange Supreme shows up like, no, I got this.
Luckily, Wong is there to give him a protection spell, but they're not sure how long that protection spell is going to last.
Yeah. I love Wong still doing his job as he's melting. Wong is just the absolute badass of badasses. I am Team Wong 100%.
I like how Wong kind of says, do you even want to stop the guy? He's doing what you want to do. He's trying to save the woman you love. it's not a matter of wanting to stop him. I have to, or the world will end. He's the Strange that understands the speech that the Ancient One gave upon her death, that it isn't about you.
Yeah. This is, I have a duty to the world. I will do that, even at a cost to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Sacrifice play.
Yeah. The recreation of the multiverse portals, that little
yeah, him whipping through the multiverse there on the way from one place to another, so good.
Yeah, beautiful recreation in animation.
Yeah. I do like the moment when the portal opens up beneath him in the sanctum and Wong's like, that's not good. Strange's like, nope, and then he just drops.
Good luck.
Wong's like, good luck.
Benedict Cumberbatch is acting here as Strange Supreme. That it's still the same voice, obviously, and they put a filter over it to make it sound more sinister. But Benedict Cumberbatch is completely acting as Strange completely differently.
I'm not even sure that's a filter. I mean, if you've seen some of the behind the scenes footage from the Hobbit films, if you've seen some of that original raw footage that they used for the motion capture, and you've heard the raw audio that they did for Smaug, like, you know what he can do with his voice. Which I think is why the American accent for Strange annoys me so much. So I'm like, I know you're better than that.
But he definitely performs Strange Supreme much differently than vanilla Doctor Strange.
Yeah, by the time he's in full Strange Supreme mode, that is a very different performance. And it is a performance that I madly respect. And like I said, I'm not even sure that's a filter there at the end. I think that's just him. But it is a very different energy going there. And I like it. And you completely believe that these are the same person at two very different points.
Yeah.
And willing to do very different things. And it sets up this match between them and this final confrontation between them, with Supreme trying to be like, hey, join me because you're the missing piece of the puzzle. I'm not strong enough to save Christine, but if I absorb you, we will be able to save her. And Doctor Strange is like, no, I am not willing to sacrifice the entire universe for her. I love her, but she would not want that.
And I think that's the different, that's obviously the difference there. One is Supreme Strange is willing to sacrifice the entire universe for one person, and Doctor Strange accepts the loss.
But also he accepts that it would be Christine's wish. Christine is also a doctor. And Christine was always a doctor who was more interested in saving people for the sake of saving people than Stephen was. Stephen was interested in saving people for the challenge, for the glory, for the ego, for the knowledge it would bring. Christine was interested in saving people because it was the ethical thing to do. And that's why she worked in the ER and he was the dude with the spinny watch case.
I gotta say that the fight between the two strangers is beautifully animated.
Yeah, and the capes get into it. I like the cloak of levitation and whatever Supreme's, purple cloak of, evil roach thing that he's got. And unfortunately, the cloak of levitation does die kind of brutally.
Burned.
Yeah. it is an absolutely brutal fight between the two of them.
Supreme Strange even going for the low blow by transforming into Christine.
Yeah.
And saying, I love you, Steven. We can be together. All you have to do is, like...
Just give in, yeah.
Give in, yeah.
Yeah. And eventually, he's using other transformations. We see the tentacles again. We see that, he's using the powers that he has collected from all these other beings. And in the end, unfortunately, it is not a fight that Doctor Strange can win.
Because Supreme Strange has absorbed so many magical beings, he is that much more stronger than regular Strange.
Yeah, he's had hundreds of years by this point of magical practice and power that he has drawn, and it's not something that can be overcome.
I like the images of the protection spell literally being punched off his body.
Yeah, it's so good. And I love the final moment of the final bit of the protection spell as he's, begging Supreme to come to reason. And Supreme just leans down and just, with a flick of his thumb, just wipes away that final glyph. And it's such a tiny little movement. It's not even violent. It's just like, like wiping a hair away. It's such a delicate little movement, and it's so beautifully animated. And it's just that final moment of resignation of like, no, this is how it ends.
The obsession of Supreme Strange, honestly. This whole, it shows the dark side of obsession.
Yeah, and then it's that moment, that moment of absorbing, the two of them, rejoining the two of them together is, again, just beautiful animation and so grotesque in a way. It's a weird form of body horror.
The chimera monster that Supreme Strange becomes.
Yeah, but he pulls the Lamborghini out of the water in that moment, and we see the kind of ghostly figure of Christine being, pulled out and reanimated, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then he's like, Christine, I brought you back. But of course it's like him with the tentacles and there's demon wings. Now his face is like a amalgamation of 4 or 5 different creatures, and none of them are human at all because of the power he's drawing to do this.
Yeah.
And she has no idea what she's seeing because none of it looks like Steven. All she knows is she was in a car crash and now she is waking up to the devil.
Yeah.
Is she in hell? She doesn't know. What is this? And also, because of her resurrection, the universe is crumbling around her. All of the buildings are crumbling. The earth is shaking. The ground is tearing apart. The ocean is retreating because they're next to the river, and she's backing away from this monster that's coming for her off to a cliff, and it's such a moment of horror. Of course, I don't think he realizes what he looks like, because in his mind, he's just Steven, it's like, hey, Christine, I'm back. You're alive.
It takes him a second because he does, once he realizes what's going on, he does revert back to his human self.
Well, he doesn't until after kind of after everything starts crumbling and he's not drawing that power anymore. Once he loses control of the spell, I think, is when. So I don't think he's in control of that transformation.
Possible.
Once they're on that kind of floating bit of ground together as the universe is ripping apart around them, and it begins to shrink to encompass just the two of them. And he's reverted back to a human form. And she realizes it's him, and she starts asking what is going on. And he's like, I brought you back, but, you know, unfortunately, consequences. And she starts to tell him, like, no, I didn't want this. Which, of course, is what Doctor Strange realized, that, like, of course she wouldn't want to be brought back at such a cost.
Yeah.
Like, who would, you know? Like, only a monster would, and she was not a monster. That's why he loved her.
Yeah. And him using all of his abilities to try to stop the crumbling of the universe, or putting this sphere around him and Christine to try to save them. And then there's the Watcher saying, hey, yeah, you're going to fix the world like you fixed Christine?
And of course, she begins to melt away in his arms, just like everything else did. He starts calling out to the Watcher for help, and it's such an incredible performance. I have to admit, when I first watched this, I was an absolute wreck watching this for the first time.
The voice acting on Cumberbatch as he's doing this, please, you're a god, I've read about you, you're a powerful being, you can stop this. And I love
the Watcher's response, and also excellent from Jeffrey Wright, first of all, when he says, I'm not a god and neither are you. That's been the whole point of this all along, my dude, and you are just realizing it now as the world crumbles around you, as she is disintegrating in your arms. That's the point that you're finally getting it.
But the point is that he does not have the ability to stop this from happening. This is Stephen's own. He was warned. Stephen was told, if you go down this path, the world will end. And he didn't want to listen. Saving Christine was all that mattered. The obsession over Christine was all that mattered to Stephen. And in the end, he lost everything.
Including her.
The one person he tried to save. The one person he sacrificed all of reality for, and she still died.
She still evaporates, you know, we still see her melt away in that same... I mean, the animation on that is as beautiful as it is horrific. That kind of weird dolly melting clock, lava lamp kind of effect they get. I do not know how they animate that, but it is so incredible. As she, you know, evaporates out of his arms like everything else in the world had. And there he is, just screaming.
And I love Christine's final words to him. What did you do?
Because she still doesn't understand what's going on. All she knows is there was a wreck, then there was nothing, then there was a monster, and then it turned into Stephen, and now I am disintegrating. What did you do?
And there he is, left with only himself and the void.
It is so tragic because it just ends there. And I mean, you know, spoilers for later on in the season that they come back to this. This is the destruction of an entire timeline.
It's that dark side of obsession. When you let obsession consume you, it's over. Literally, you know, Stephen let his grief for the loss of Christine consume him. That nothing else mattered but Christine, bringing Christine back from the dead, changing that one moment in history. That he spent centuries obsessing over that one moment to try to change it, and in the end, lost everything. The entire universe paid for his obsession.
Yeah, it is so gut-wrenching in the way it is set up and the way it is carried through. A lot of people want to hate on this episode because of the way that it deals with, and we've talked about this before in a lot of other things about the concept of fridging, and does this count as, Christine being fridged, I'm willing to give it a little more leeway on that. I don't mind stories that deal with grief. I think that if you're going to talk about Doctor Strange in an alternate timeline, okay? We talked about with the original film, he only has two things in his life. He has his work and he has Christine. So, if you're going to say, well, what if Doctor Strange lost something that wasn't his work? You only have one other option.
Mm-hmm. Now, if Christine had died and they were already broken up, would the same thing? Would he be just as obsessive?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very important to the story that they are happy at the moment he loses her.
He even says it in one of the times he goes back in time, that the only time he's ever happy. Yeah, he's happy with Christine. Christine is the only thing that gives him happiness.
That's the thing is he does make the thing of it. Is there no way we can be happy? And I think that that's the point. He can lose his hands in the other universe because he and Christine are already broken up. She's still in his life. She's still there. But they can't be together. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see probably in the multiverse. Because we see, like, bits in the trailer of, like, her getting married to somebody else probably.
Yeah.
But, which may just be a nightmare of his. We don't know.
That might just be a constant of the multiverse, that Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer are not meant to be together.
Yeah.
Which is a sucky constant, but it's a constant.
Even in the comics he marries somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? It may just be a constant of the multiverse that, like, well, dude, you can't be with her.
Yeah. Which sucks. And again, I would love to go back and do the rest of the series, and maybe we will one day. But for the purposes of Doctor Strange week, this is where we end that.
It will be interesting to see if everyone is right that this was the introduction of Strange Supreme, and we will get the continuation of that in the film. Check back with us in our other special episode.
So we're not going to ask the question because we're not going over the full series yet. So we're gonna end the what if discussion here. Put a pin in it for right now. So as I said in the last episode, our next full episode is going to be Return of Jafar, and that's going to be on Monday. Our next special episode for Doctor Strange week is going to be our complete spoiler-filled discussion on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The movie is not out at the time of this recording, and we'll see if we were right, we were wrong. If we're already wrong, stay tuned for all of that, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic,
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic,
and of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.